We've finally welcomed our morning guest, Denis Yelisevich. Good morning, Denis.
Hello, hello.
Well, Dennis, hi. I have to make two comments to you. One of them really amazes me. We usually make an announcement and we get two or three comments. People who are waiting for the guest write something, but not 400 like now. And I want to tell you about the geography, although I'm sure you already know this without me. Mykolaiv, Dnipro, Vinnytsia, Ivano-Frankivsk, Donbas, Moscow, Florida, Rivne, Kharkiv, Odessa. I can go on naming this atlas forever, and I want to tell you, Dennis, that the atlas is listening to you. It's not just viewers coming to your channels anymore. Do you see the same geography or not?
Yes, I regularly track the analytics. Basically, if you look at it over a month, sometimes there are super exotic places, like even Iran. There are even a couple thousand views from Iran. Thank you.
It's amazing. I suggested people write where they're from. Yes, today again, Kharkiv, Odessa. Well, anyway, my congratulations to you, because when the whole world is listening to someone, that's already very serious. Well, Dennis, today, January 27th, is Holocaust Remembrance Day. I could not mention this, and what's happening today in Israel, and yesterday, the last hostage, as you surely know, returned home, and today Israelis are sweetly taking off the yellow ribbon from their jackets, the one they put on until everyone is home. And today, videos are showing students there, showing politicians as they take off this ribbon and say in Hebrew, Kulam Babaita, everyone is home. It's awful to watch this. Today is the funeral for that soldier, the last one brought home. By the way, do you know how they searched for him? There were 250 bodies there. Dentists and all kinds of specialists examined them to find this guy and make sure it was really him. The value of each person's life in Israel is incredible. The tragedy of October 7th is often compared to the Holocaust, as people say only that horror can match what happened when 6 million, including children, women, and the elderly, were burned. I wouldn't dare to compare this with Ukraine in any way. Denis, Ukraine is Ukraine, Israel is Israel. But I still want to ask you, what do you think? They say never again. Have people learned the lesson of history, or is it unlikely?
Did they learn it only in the short term? I think humans are like that. These mistakes will always be repeated. According to the Kabbalists, they foresaw everything that has happened since Hitler's time. So the whole problem is that people separate instead of uniting, and there will always be a reason that will make them quarrel and divide. And when this happens between religions, between ethnic groups, at least you can see some kind of logical chain. But when it happens within one ethnic group, within one country, it's monstrous.
Denis, was that a hint that that the people in our country are completely divided?
In Ukraine,
In Ukraine. I wanted to clarify. Of course, now there will be questions about Ukraine and about those negotiations, the ones that happened before, the ones that will happen later. What is happening in Ukraine today? People are without electricity and heat. But I want to ask you, I'm really curious. You're a young man and, in my opinion, very advanced. Tell me, please. Yesterday we had guests. I'm sure you didn't see it, I think, because you're very busy. I see your streams that you do, and there are a lot of them, and they're very deep and thorough. Tell me, please. Yesterday we had guests. Ezra Moore is an Israeli blogger, and we also invited a young guy, 23 years old. Ibrahim Musa, originally from Iraq, has his own channel called Voices of Arabs. Voice of Arabs, yes. Well, he used to be, so to speak, extremely anti-Israeli, unbelievably so, always wearing an Arafat scarf. He even has a photo, and the guy, how can I put it? In the process, it's not like, as people say today, he changed his shoes. That's a silly phrase. But he started to look at it a bit differently. So differently that he came to talk with Ezra, considering him, well, people think Ezra is too right-wing, too harsh. And the first time I suggested that Ibrahim come, he didn't want to. He said, well, with someone, yes, but with Ezra, well, that's out of the question. A month or two later, I wrote to him suggesting a possibility. He agreed and they spoke yesterday. You can't imagine how many comments we got on the radio. We've never had so many positive ones. Usually they're just negative. Yes, but this time finally people started talking. Two young men started talking. Only young people can do this today. Dennis, look, you, the youth, you can change the world because today you hold the wheel of history in your hands. It must be.
Thank you. In any case, I'm doing all I can. I don't want to say I'm changing the world, but I'm trying to make a difference in Ukraine. You know, there was a presidential candidate in the last election campaign, Vivek Ramaswamy, also a right-winger, and he said that we have a lot of problems in America. We must still gather at the same dinner table and discuss everything, despite our disagreements, because this is our country and opinions differ. But we all live here. Our children and parents live here. So it can't be allowed to escalate into an armed confrontation or for us to declare each other enemies. I'm convinced this needs to be done in Ukraine, but it feels like a lone voice in the wilderness. Because if you look at today's propaganda, on the contrary, they're looking for enemies, trying to find them where they don't exist, searching for a black cat in a dark room where there isn't one, searching and searching. Why? Because it's the only way to govern Ukraine, divide and conquer. I mean, the authorities who are currently in power, they don't know any other way, because for anything else, you need to be constructive, you need to offer people something, and they have nothing to offer. The offer is simple: stay alive, donate, and keep quiet. Or the second option, go to the front and die. That's it. There's no third option. And others support this. Yesterday, Israel's ambassador, a woman from the Canadian diaspora and embassy, is actually Canada's ambassador. She comes to the interview and says, yes, you have to endure. Patient people will endure anything. If you don't endure this, Russia will take over everything. Her only choice is to endure, to survive, if you can call it that, without electricity or heat. The second option is Russia occupying POEO. However, Ukraine isn't expected to end the war or become prosperous and powerful.
Tell me.
Excuse me, please. Do you mean the ambassador of Canada to Ukraine?
Yes.
Wonderful.
I'll send you this short video after the broadcast.
It's very important to me. Sorry, Bodan.
Denis, do you think that these people, like a third party, for example, the Canadian ambassador, are they preventing us from sitting down at the table, as you say, the dinner table, all together with our disagreements and coming to an agreement? And the second question right away, do you think that we have a huge divide between ordinary people and politicians? PO.
By we and us, do you mean Ukraine? Yes.
Of course, yes.
Please say Ukraine, because they are all from Ukraine.
So that they understand.
What you are talking about. Yes, yes, please come in.
Well, the third party, as you said, is actually not really a third party. The Canadian ambassador and all those like her, they are all people from the globalist flank who work for a certain agenda. They may present it a little differently with one approach or another, but overall it's the same agenda, about incitement. The project is officially anti-Russia, but in reality it's Russia 2.0. What's happening now follows Putin's playbook. And that's how all of this is played out. Regarding the second question, what did you say the second question was?
Do you think there is a huge divide between ordinary people and politicians in our country?
Honestly, I'll admit to you, I don't really like the expression ordinary people. People often come to my streams and say, Dennis, what should I do as an ordinary person? My first advice is don't be ordinary, because ordinary people get pushed around just like they're being pushed around today. You need to be extraordinary. You know, right now, some serious things are happening in America related to Minneapolis and what's going on. And I do not condone the killings that have happened. It should never have come to this. Trump was simply set up by the people he trusted with this. This is his first and only major blunder. Second, those people who protested against this are crazy leftists, but as citizens, well, on a personal level, I don't like them. I even despise them. But I welcome democracy and people's love of freedom, just like in Israel. I'm opposed to the protests against Netanyahu, attended by 100,000, 200,000 people. But I'm glad that during the war, democracy means people feel they have these rights. They're not being killed, not being shot at. The special services aren't breaking in. They're not being arrested. Just think about what's happening in Ukraine. 5 days without electricity, without heat, with temperatures at -15 outside in the capital of Ukraine. It's unimaginable. Children, elderly parents, yes, even for someone in their prime, it's very hard. It's incredible. Here's a large house or residential complex in Kiev. And after so many hours or days, when the power comes back on, young people go out into the courtyards, set up tables with drinks, and start dancing and celebrating the return of electricity.
Are you serious right now? Are you really saying this? Yes, I understand.
Yes, I posted this on Telegram, but then I deleted it because I realized it was going to cause a mess. I deleted it in the comments, but I saw how even people on my own channel were against my point of view. You don't understand. People have been without power for 4 days. What if it were you? My family is in Ukraine in the same conditions, and so are my friends. I'm not saying people are bad, I'm just showing you the difference. People born and raised in a democracy, and those in Kiev who have never experienced it. I've never lived in a democracy. For 34 years, Ukraine had a quasi-democracy, I admit. They don't demand their rights or protest or ask, why have we been without electricity for 5 days? But we know that those in power are doing just fine, and we know about the theft that has happened. I have information that there was an energy scandal during this period. You may not know. In Ukraine, apart from Mindik, 1.5 to 2 billion hryvnias were stolen, a massive sum. How did the industrial electricity tariff in Ukraine double? I'm just explaining to people, those who had access, the traders, they bought electricity at the old price because they knew there would be a price increase, and then they resold it at twice the price. That's how they made 1.5 to 2 billion hryvnias. Do you think this is possible without direct ties to top state officials? No, it's not, right? That's it. And those fools go out and celebrate. That's what outraged me and what I called Bidlo, to be honest with you, because for me, Bidlo are those who don't stand up for their rights. I'm not talking about banners, Maidan, or revolution where you risk getting killed, arrested, or sent to the front. At least try not to act like an idiot. Stay home, grumble, complain, call friends, but don't celebrate just because the lights come on. That's what they've pushed people to. I read Elon Musk, he was talking about something else, but he put it well. He said that human consciousness can be poisoned, a poisoned consciousness. And today in Ukraine, consciousness is poisoned.
Tell me, please, when I talk to people from Ukraine, and we have guys who work here whose families are still there, just like you, they talk about the fact that there's no electricity and what they call today Holodomor, not Holodomor. Tell me, could something eventually happen to people because of this? Well, I don't mean an internal government coup, but people's reaction. How long can they endure this? A month, 2 months, how long?
I'm not ready to talk about time frames because if someone had told me this would happen, I would have said people wouldn't endure it, but they are enduring. But at the same time, I can't say there's no light at the end of the tunnel. After all, there's a lot of dissatisfaction, let's say widespread dissatisfaction. But still, there are many like the ones I told you about. In Kryvyi Rih, for example, people went out and blocked the streets. I'm not calling for action now. We're just discussing the situation. People blocked streets and made demands. These are people who have some self-respect and understanding that after all, this is our city, our country. That's how I see it.
Tell me, please, the questions that were sent to you in advance. I chose one of them. Are there any others? Ask Denis if Ukraine has a real military strategy for victory today, or are we just living from one aid package to the next?
So, the word victory is completely inappropriate here. Victory is impossible. It was impossible from the start. We could only give them a hard blow. And that happened in May 2022. Russia got hit hard, and that was the peak, the maximum point when a peace agreement should have been signed, but it wasn't. Today isn't about shifting between aid packages. The countdown has begun. And honestly, I don't know the exact timeline, but last year I roughly mentioned the fall of 2026. If this continues, then there will be an explosion, the kind you're talking about, social or any other kind. Zelensky now has data on his desk revealing widespread public discontent. For the first time, he saw real data showing dissatisfaction. That's the only reason he's now pretending to negotiate. I'm glad the world press confirmed what I told my people. I knew he was only negotiating to avoid upsetting Trump and has no intention of giving up Donbass. He thinks I'll pretend to agree, hoping Putin won't. Then I'll tell Trump, see, Putin is bad and I'm good. So let's get the tomahawks and bomb Russia. That's the kind of story going on there. And America has set a clear condition. The troops must be withdrawn from Donbass. We sign security guarantees, Congress ratifies, then we follow the roadmap, peace.
Tell me, ask Denis, if we put aside emotions and slogans today, is it weapons that Ukraine needs most right now? Time or an honest conversation with society?
Well, if I have to choose from these three options, then an honest conversation with society. But that's also a general phrase, kind of abstract. I mean, what does an honest conversation really mean? What's honest to me may not be for Zelensky, and he's unable to have a real conversation with society. Thank you. Money, time, then weapons. It's absurd, as time benefits Russia. Russia has more resources, more people. They're in a stronger position right now. They're attacking, they're advancing, they're taking territory. Huge territories, yes, maybe little by little each day, but over the course of a year. That's 5,000 SQ km in a year. That's why weapons. Who's going to fight with these weapons? I want to ask, you provided weapons for another year and forcibly mobilized men knowing the backlash. We have men who don't want to or can't fight. After a year, then what? We drove Russia out and improved our negotiating position, but we'll lose more people, more territory, and our position will worsen. In a year, they won't just be demanding that you leave Donbass. We'll talk about a free economic zone there, thanks to Trump, split along the current line in Zaporizhzhia and Kherson. He'll say, no, now it's Kherson, Zaporizhzhia.
Let's see. On January 23rd to 24th, these very negotiations took place in Abu Dhabi, a trilateral meeting of delegations from Russia, Ukraine, and the United States. But it was at the delegation level, not at the presidential level. The United States acted as a mediator. What are your thoughts on these negotiations and their purpose?
Well, as I told you, the United States is having a serious conversation, and the United States has a concrete plan. Trump has a concrete plan. Right now, I'm just separating Budanov and Zelensky. Budanov is leading the delegation. Well, Budanov, Arakamia, Umarov. I separate them from Zelensky. Because in my opinion, well, many people don't support this point of view or don't agree with it. I believe that a stage will come soon when Budanov will have to take the initiative into his own hands because Zelensky will keep telling him what to do. In Kiev, we do not agree to any withdrawal from Donbass. Budanov, knowing the situation will worsen, will need to act on his own initiative. I don't know how.
Well, no, look, it's just that I listened to and watched those negotiations, yes. One of the key disagreements there was Russia's position on the territory of Donbass. And so they're asking you, to what extent is this position really a subject of bargaining, or is it a soft red line for Moscow?
No, it's a subject of bargaining. Well, how should I put it, bargaining? This condition was set long ago, not recently. It's been in place since last summer in Anchorage. I also told my viewers. Your withdrawal from Donbass wasn't linked to a free economic zone before, but now it's being discussed because of Trump. I never imagined that. I thought they'd just tell us to leave and Russia would control Donbass. Now they're discussing a free economic zone. Do you know our focus here? Somehow, in Ukraine, the economic statements from the American delegation are being completely ignored. Here, Vitkov in Davos announces a free trade zone which will give Ukraine incredible economic advantages. That means goods will be able to be traded with the United States without tariffs. Ukraine, but Poland, Hungary, Romania, and all neighbors have tariffs. We have advantages. He says producing, moving to Ukraine, manufacturing, and trading with America are instantly profitable, leading to big investments and jobs. In Ukraine, they don't consider this a guarantee of security, but I think that European and American companies on Ukrainian territory are a guarantee of security. No one thinks like that. What's my point? Why do we need an economy? They think we need weapons, cannon fodder, we'll just seize this now. I'm not the one calling people cannon fodder. I understand. They'll just send them to the front. Those who discuss the economy or a prosperous life in Ukraine are called Kremlin agents or idiots. This is how they influence people, by focusing on the economy.
Yes, look, Ukraine refused to discuss territorial concessions at the trilateral meeting. You probably saw or heard about it. Question for Denis. Is this a principled or a base position of Kyiv, or is it just a negotiation tactic at the first stage? What does this refusal to make concessions mean? Thank you.
Zelensky, in my view, won't agree to withdraw from Donbass without direct, strong pressure from President Trump on him personally, not just his entourage. Let me explain why, but there's a nuance. I'll tell you about it now. Donbass, he needs to go to elections. And for him, withdrawing from Donbas means handing a trump card to the so-called political opposition in Ukraine. Look, Ukraine is being surrendered. Look, Zelensky gave up Ukraine, sold Ukraine. In short, it would be total political capitulation for Zelensky. But there's other information that he said, if you accept Ukraine into the European Union starting from January 1, 1927, then I'll withdraw troops from Donbas. Why is it done this way? Because let's imagine, let's model the situation. Troops are withdrawn from Donbas, a peace agreement is reached, and Ukraine joins the European Union starting January 1 of the next year. Zelensky is running this year claiming, on January 1 we join the European Union. I'm a historic president. See my greatness. Without this, nothing happens. So what's our conclusion? Negotiations are happening, but Zelensky's focus isn't Ukraine's future. He's aiming for his next presidential term.
Look, the Abu Dhabi negotiations were taking place against the backdrop of ongoing strikes on Ukraine. How much does this military activity undermine the purpose of diplomacy?
We're dealing with Putin, and as I've told you many times before and everywhere else, the KGB operates differently. The KGB won't act any other way. I'm amazed by people. I get similar comments often. Oh, really? Putin wants peace? Who told you that? Just who said that Putin wants peace? Second, has a ceasefire agreement been made? No, the war is ongoing, so what's the point? Putin is a good guy. He'll suddenly come to his senses. Oh, that's it, I won't bomb anymore. I'm a decent person and should know when to stop. But he waited for this cold -15 to bomb Kiev and Ukraine. And people live with naive thoughts. You know, I want to tell you one more thing right now. In Ukraine, fabricated stories about Israel, like fake Golda Meir quotes, were quite popular. Like, you can't negotiate with someone who came to kill you. But there are still video clips of her laughing with the president of Egypt, giving him gifts during peace talks. Reuters is now reporting that during the negotiations in Abu Dhabi, the Ukrainian and Russian delegations had lunch together and looked like friends. That's not my quote, it's from Reuters or the international community. And so the myths have fallen apart, that we don't negotiate with terrorists, that we don't negotiate with those who came to kill us. Those are fairy tales for fools. If you're responsible for the state and people, you'll negotiate. That's how life works.
Tell me, please, was Czechoslovakia a mediator at the negotiations, the architect of the future war scenario? You know,
should it? Yes, as a mediator and peacekeeper, but what about future wars? Well, you see, people want to squeeze out some kind of conspiracy theory for themselves, but when you actually show them what Soros is doing, they don't want to hear or see it.
After the strikes on the power grids and stations in Kiev and Kharkiv, thousands of homes are without heating and it's freezing. How critical is this for big cities? I don't get it. Aren't Kiev and Kharkiv big cities?
It's critical, of course. They've brought us mini CHPs from abroad, but the situation is still very bad. What other perspective is there? If we imagine that the war continues, what will happen next? In winter, the entire energy infrastructure will be destroyed. It will be worse than this winter. And we need to remember and think about that. And Zelensky is thinking now, well, just 2 more weeks, and then the temperature will change, and this and that will happen, and somehow things will work out. This harms those who believe we should or even can continue. The war cannot go on under any circumstances. It's not about capitulation. Trump is offering security guarantees that Congress will ratify, making them rock solid.
Ask Denis. In winter conditions, this is a question from Ukraine. Turning off the heating is a threat to us, to elderly people, to children. Where is the line between military actions and the humanitarian catastrophe?
A humanitarian catastrophe has already happened. It has already happened. I was the first to use this phrase for my people. You know, when 3 months ago I said a humanitarian catastrophe awaits Ukraine and Kiev, some people also commented, why are you saying this and scaring people? Today it's officially called a humanitarian catastrophe in Ukraine. So we're simply stating the fact, it has happened.
Well, a lot of people are writing about the tax on heating, but you and I have already talked about this, about Abu Dhabi and about what will happen and the next negotiations that are scheduled for early February. Will it be a continuation of what happened before, or will it be nothing again?
Negotiations are planned for this coming Sunday, and there are talks about to attempt to arrange a higher level meeting between Zelensky and Putin. I don't think it will happen for the reasons I gave. I think that if during these upcoming weekends Zelensky continues with this stance that he won't withdraw troops from Donbass and won't make any compromises, then will there be another lull in this sense?
Well, I'm asking you, so to speak, the United States continues to participate in all the negotiations. What do you think Washington expects from the next meeting, and how much can it influence this situation so that these parties can actually reach some kind of agreement?
Well, look, there is some progress now. That's just how things are working there at the moment. As far as I know, there is a specific disagreement on one issue regarding the withdrawal of troops from Donbass, and that issue is set aside. Besides that, there are about 50 other issues, and they're gradually reaching agreements on each of them. They're saving the most important part for last. Zelensky is likely waiting for a signal from Europe. Are they letting him into the European Union or not? There's also this moment in Ukraine where people have been energized. So Trump is considered the bad guy, and we should distance ourselves from him. The European Union initially promised money and weapons, but neither happened, and now they're making new statements. Yesterday, a guy came, he says he's a serviceman, and he writes to me on Telegram, Trump means capitulation, you're a capitulator. We should consider the European peace plan, but I ask, where is it? We haven't heard anything about it, and there was no answer. So they made it up, but where was Europe before Trump? Trump is bad. Let's put him aside. Let's take European plans and security guarantees. They don't exist. They're not capable of anything. They want war in Ukraine.
Is there a chance that the format of negotiations will expand, for example, with the participation of the European Union or other countries, if, so to speak, the current trilateral format does not yield any results?
Denis, this already happened. Leaders visited Trump at Mar-a-Lago, made promises, then left without keeping them. Trump excluded them from negotiations because they oppose peace in Ukraine and want the fighting to continue to restrain Putin. They'll keep living normally and peacefully for now, rearm, and try to address political issues, though that's not obvious yet. So why invite them? What's the purpose? I think agreements are already being made at the leadership level, meaning Trump is clearly calling Ursula, Merz, and Macron. So I think these delegations are just for show. They've been removed from the negotiations.
At the February 1st meeting, the presidents of Russia, Ukraine, and the United States are again not expected to participate. Ask Nenisa what the absence of top officials means. Does it indicate a suspicious stage or a reluctance to take responsibility for any decisions?
Yes, it's not about responsibility. Well, in a way it is, but that's really not the point here. In this case, diplomacy doesn't work in such a way that top officials come and discuss something 10 times. Top officials meet only when everything has already been approved and decided. There might be some final one-on-one nuances, yes, but for everything else, 99% of the time, when they've shaken hands, signed a framework agreement, some kind of preliminary or gentleman's agreement, everything else doesn't work that way. There won't be 3 meetings or meeting and not agreeing and then saying, let's try again in a week. None of that will happen.
Interesting question for you, Denis. The Financial Times, citing sources, reports that the United States is ready to provide security guarantees to Ukraine only if Kyiv agrees to cede Donbass to Russia. Does this mean Washington has changed its stance on the war?
No, how is that a different stance? I knew about this. I knew about this strategy before. And I told the viewers today in the Financial Times. I saw it. It was published. My viewers already knew about it anyway. Withdrawal from Donbass and a free economic zone are being discussed. No other guarantees will follow. Zelensky, as he wanted, says, let's sign a ceasefire agreement. Trump says it's easy to break. What's the point of that? It will immediately set us back and make the situation worse. They want to see for themselves because they know it won't work. They know the ceasefire is easy to disrupt and want it to fail, but Trump doesn't want that. Okay, let's agree on this. Are we all in? We've signed. Now let's take it to Congress and ratify it in Ukraine's Supreme Rada. And that's how it is. This is already a roadmap, a plan. Elections, let's go ahead and announce them. And how else? How can Trump do it differently?
Well, Denis, if the security guarantees of the United States are linked to territorial concessions, does that mean that the issue of Donbass is actually taken out of the framework of a military solution?
Honestly, I didn't understand the question.
Can you repeat that for me, Denis? If United States security guarantees are linked to territorial concessions, does this mean that the issue of Donbass is effectively taken out of the scope of a military solution?
He likely didn't understand his own question.
I don't understand.
Honestly,
May I
Try.
translate this question? I'm from Donbass, Denis, and I'm also very interested in it. It seems to me that this person is asking whether everything has already been decided about Donbass, whether it's already decided that it will leave, go to Russia, and not return to Ukraine. And just a little addition from me, what are the chances, what needs to happen, what are the chances that Donbass will return to Ukraine? How maybe can Ukraine win it back? What are the options, the chances?
if we're discussing Zelensky withdrawing troops from Donbass now, he can't surrender it or withdraw troops since the constitution doesn't give him that authority. It will never be Ukrainian territory again, just like Crimea. It's not what I want. I'm just telling you realistically how it looks, all these conversations. We'll take it back, taking advantage of the right moment someday. I used to think that way myself a few years ago, but I understand perfectly well that if you think like that, it will only lead to a new war. Politicians will say through diplomatic means. You ask, how? Tell us diplomatically. They don't answer that question. It's just populism for politics and ratings with no real solution. I suggested discussing the issue of a federal structure for Ukraine or autonomy so that Donbass could return to Ukraine with autonomous status. Now Trump is leaving with this proposal. They have everything, they have their own governor, they have everything of their own. It's autonomy within Ukraine. For Putin, Donbass is also a bottomless pit. Billions of dollars are poured in, hundreds, and nothing happens there.
There is more to this, guys, regarding the fact that the check went through. Washington, as you said, according to the Financial Times, is offering Ukraine more weapons to strengthen its army even in peacetime in exchange for withdrawing troops from control. He arrived from Kiev East. Is this helping Ukraine, Denis, or just a political concession?
It's strengthening Ukraine and is the cost of a political concession. Glad you mentioned peacetime, since in Ukraine some now claim Trump will provide weapons. No, we're discussing peacetime, and security guarantees from Congress refer to weapons. I'll repeat, this is good and I support it, but it must work in practice. This won't save us if Russia starts a new war. Only a strong economy and Ukraine can.
Only the economy and a strong Ukraine, Denis. But now they're asking about the Americans' willingness to discuss security guarantees only after concessions from Ukraine. Do you think that's pragmatism, or is everyone just tired of the war?
That this person can't read or listen? What do you mean, discuss or not? They're already talking about signing security guarantees now. Zelensky has a 100% final document on security guarantees on his desk, which Trump is ready to submit to Congress for ratification. For us, it's not about debating in the Verkhovna Rada, but signing it. You leave Donbass and we ratify the security guarantees. Yes.
But they write here that the Americans haven't fully approved any of the documents that were presented. And there's already a leak in the Western press saying that's how it was, that not a single document was approved. Does this mean that there is targeted pressure being put on Kyiv through public opinion?
No, the person doesn't even keep up with open sources in time. He's about 2 weeks behind the news agenda. Continued. Zelensky himself came out and said in his evening video address 3 or 4 days ago that everyone is 100% ready. Guarantees, like when he was in the Baltics recently and said this.
Yeah, have you seen the Economic Forum in Davos? And what do you think about this spectacle, about this show? And is it really a show?
No, it's not a show. This event had a bad reputation when Schwab was in charge. It was all a leftist story. Now things have changed a bit. We can already see that Musk is speaking there, who flew in urgently. We see Javier Milei, who is speaking there for the second year in a row. Trump is speaking there, and some shifts have happened. I listened to the full speeches of Trump, Milei, Musk, and the head of BlackRock, Fink, and I didn't really listen to anyone else there. There was no one else worth listening to. So I advise people to do the same, especially when it comes to Milei and Musk, because Milei shows how Ukraine should be successful, and Musk is about what will happen tomorrow. And if a person listens to Elon Musk's speech and then the whole agenda, what we're discussing with you, the whole agenda, all the news about Ukraine, he'll just understand. They're taking me back to the Middle Ages, but tomorrow everything will change. We're behind, but we can catch up. We have a nuclear power plant. What I'm talking about, but people in Ukraine don't think in these terms. You see, they don't think like that. We slept through the cryptocurrency revolution. We could have been the #1 crypto country in Ukraine. Ukraine is a country and a society that implements and accepts new know-how into life very quickly. It's a very internet-savvy country. My 77-year-old grandmother lives there and easily uses the internet and computers like many others. So retirees handle all of this easily. Contactless payments and all that are quick in Ukraine. Ukraine could have been the center of all this, but nobody needs it. They secretly use nuclear energy. Illegally enriching themselves, those with access in Ukraine don't care.
Okay, you just said that the president of Argentina say it must be, and Nicole Cacavanaka, Patriotism are extremely such categories. The atmosphere is set. You're in the Ukrainian district, focused on continuation.
Open any news, especially videos. Any speaker will tell you that it's a humanitarian catastrophe. The war can't be stopped. Trump is bad. We need to keep fighting. Portnikov claims there will never be peace in Ukraine. Here's his latest statement. There will never be peace, which means
there will never be peace in Ukraine.
That's it. The war in Ukraine will be endless with occasional breaks. That's what he said. There may be 10-year gaps without open fire or war, but the conflict will persist. Ukraine's survival depends on the end of the Russian Federation. It's us or them.
That is until the last Ukrainian.
Well, of course, unless these Ukrainians are like Portnikov, who just spoke in Los Angeles 2 days ago for some reason.
But can I?
Denis on this one. By the way, you explained it well just now about Portnikov, who isn't fighting but says, let's go fight now, we'll win soon. The main thing is to go and fight people. And I have a question about people who are shouting the same thing, but from abroad saying, go fight themselves. They sit here, found a job in a warm office and say, yes, look, it's terrible, we're being bombed, let's respond, and that's my opinion. It seems to me that people in Ukraine think a little differently now.
Yes, many do, but still quite a lot think the way you said. And as for those abroad, I've been dealing with this for years. I call it hypocrisy. But how would I seem if I came to you now? No peace, only war, but I'd be in another country. That's who I'd be then. These people are completely immoral. Portnikov, many abroad, and unfortunately many women who just want coffee in Warsaw. But no land should ever be given to Putin. She's never been there and never will, but it can't be surrendered, even though it's not just about concessions. And I've already said what it's about, but the propaganda said it's about surrendering. So tell me...
Please, I don't want to mention any specific names or surnames, but when a person like Portnikov, for example, says that the war will last forever, and he even tries to justify it somehow, and there are others like him, it will last forever because it doesn't need to end. Because of what? Because, dear Denis...
Because you can't live next to Russia, and this is an existential war. Sooner or later they will attack anyway, and the issue will be resolved. But they just refer to how many books they've read, how incredibly smart they are. And so, when the war ends, it's either us or them, I repeat. They actually tell people that tomorrow Russia will collapse, tomorrow Russia will go bankrupt. Now Zelensky comes out and talks with Fedorov, the new Minister of Defense. So if we kill 50,000 Russians a month, Putin will think about ending the war. But why don't you mention how many Ukrainians will die in this collapse? We need to discuss this. Are we just supposed to accept that we killed 50,000 Russians while 20 to 30,000 of our own people die? So women will just have more children. Is that all it is? How can you think that way? He counts them, but not us. What is that, like Stalin?
So 50,000 a month will die on the Russian side, but the Ukrainian numbers aren't mentioned. Thank you.
Of course.
Of course. When there are no more arguments left to object to you, yes, or to us, or to you, that's when they start writing now. Denis, I get it. Your other opponent, whose money is funding your and the popular channel's promotion, then things continued as normal. I don't know what Liberty is or who Tanechka is and have no idea what this is about. Denis, but when you get confronted like that, it's obvious why it happens when there's nothing to answer with. Or how do you react to such statements?
I've been doing business since 2012, since 2012. The question of at whose expense where, that's a strange question. That's the first thing. Second, what does it mean to promote channels? Are they advertised somewhere? If it's organic, it's not even haters. I don't even want to waste time on this. It's just at whose expense? What's the difference? Am I promoting something bad there?
Well, I get it, Dennis, dear. That's why I say when I see this, I really don't understand what it means and what they're trying to say with it. That's the main thing. I don't understand.
Excuse me, Alexandra, can we ask Soros why he bought so much media in Ukraine? He doesn't care how the president's office funds bloggers, he's not interested, but he's curious about who funds me. See how they think? They can't believe I'm doing this myself. It doesn't make sense to them.
I'm very familiar with what you're talking about right now. Ask Denis about the Russian language and the church. In what form will this be implemented? Will it be a slight rollback in terms of laws, or will the Russian language receive a different status?
To my knowledge, this issue won't be resolved. It seems that the Russian language will not have the status of a second state language, but it will have official status. So basically nothing will change. It already has official status under Article 10 of Ukraine's constitution. Now it will actually be enforced. As for the Russian church, as far as I know, it will also have to be kept.
I'm amazed. Well, Kedmi told you everything. Well, I'm very glad he told you everything. That's wonderful. I already asked Denis about Kedmi. I'm not going to go back to this. These debates are over. The next one will be whenever and with whomever Denis Yelisevich wants. Confrontation. The answer to why the war will be eternal for you and me, Denis, is that the confrontation between Europe and Russia will always exist. It runs territorially through Ukraine. Even if the princes oppose war, their opinions won't matter. Conflict here will be endless. That's why you and I don't know, and why there isn't an answer.
Because these are Russians writing, they have this kind of hatred, bitterness. Europe didn't start the war, Russia started the war, but in their understanding, Europe started it. Well, let's not waste time on these people brainwashed by propaganda, even for a second.
If you want, ask Denis. If Ukraine agrees to withdraw troops from part of Donbas, what real security guarantees does it get, and who will provide them?
It seems the person either wasn't listening carefully or didn't join from the beginning of the broadcast. Maybe there will be something like an analog of NATO's Article 5 just without NATO membership, something similar, on paper. All of this will be beautifully presented, weapons will be promised, armament will be signed for. This is actually everything that Ukraine has received. Right now, in this war, it's the same format. Yeah, but look.
How ready are Ukrainian society and the army to accept a scenario where peace is achieved at the cost of losing part of their territory?
We've already lost territories, we've all lost them already. Now it's not about giving anything to anyone, but about withdrawing troops from a certain territory. This may sound unpleasant for Bohdan since he's from that region and I have friends there. I visited Donbas many times, but neither I nor the person asking gave it up. This was all due to Ukraine's mismanagement.
Yes.
I completely agree with you, actually, Denis, but maybe I don't have the same doubt or pity about Russia coming there. For one reason, I want people to stop dying there. Unfortunately, I have almost no classmates left. They're young guys, young people. It shouldn't be like this. Again, if this whole war stops today and not one more person dies, I'm ready for Donbas to stay with Russia. We have it today. Again, I don't know how all this should turn around today, but we have Russian authorities. The ruble is in circulation. The ruble is the only currency. There are children there today, those who were born in the 2000s. They don't speak Ukrainian. There's basically zero Ukrainian.
And that's,
by the way,
to your question about returning this, returning that, thank you. Putin annexed it, you could say, 13 years ago, 12 years ago, 12 years ago. So a child who was 5 years old then is now 17. That's almost an adult. People don't think about that. People don't think about that. I'm sorry it happened this way, and I really did offer a solution, but the solution isn't politically beneficial for them. Well, that's how it ends now. It's sad for Ukraine.
Thank you. Ask if Zelensky will sign the peace agreement, but the troops won't withdraw from Donbas. Then what?
Thank you. He won't sign the peace agreement.
Yes.
The war will continue. It will go on. The war will continue.
Thank you. But if Zelensky signs the peace agreement and the troops don't withdraw from Donbas, what happens then? What if they stay?
This person is probably hinting that the military won't listen to Zelensky.
Obviously.
Well, I don't believe in that scenario. I've heard different opinions about it. I've heard some military people say the same thing publicly, but I don't believe that scenario. Why? Because then it would be a military junta, it would be an open rebellion and so on if the troops don't listen to the president.
Does it look like that? If it's a military uprising, then what? Will it be the next Maidan?
A Maidan is possible in Ukraine if everything isn't handled gently after the war, that is, if some games start. Well, for example, not letting everyone who wants to run in the elections. There are several ways to do this, such as citing laws or resorting to harsh actions. Without a democratic process, a Maidan could happen.
You know, I'm writing a comment right now, Bodan. It's about Bodan. I'm saying more. A person's opinion is always interesting. But some people here, probably me and Denis, appeal to the people and speak on their behalf, but they don't want to listen to the person himself. So what is it about you, Denis Yelisevich? I don't really understand.
I listened to Bodan, I made sure to listen to him. Well,
I think in this situation, of course, it's much more interesting to listen to Denis. He's more familiar with all this mess. He knows, he lived there during the war. So after all, the person probably meant Donbas.
the person probably meant Donbas, and we're talking about Donbas. Probably that's what the person meant. Yes, yes.
I meant that too, V.
Well, I want to remind you once again that I left there before all of this happened, before all these events, before the events before Maidan. So I'm not the person who saw it with my own eyes, only from the stories of friends and relatives. You said,
Bogdan, you said you left 10 years ago, right?
I left in 2013.
2013.
That's right?
But you just said you barely have any classmates left alive.
Yes.
That's not answering what's needed today, but rather what Denis Yelisevich is discussing. Denis, I have a question for you. One day the government in the United States will change, and if the leftists come to power again, what will happen to the security guarantees?
Congressional ratification is permanent and unchangeable, which is why it occurs. If only Trump does it, the next president can undo it, like Trump sometimes does. But if Congress acts, it's final. It's impossible to influence it anymore.
Denis, why isn't there a Maidan now?
Dennis, martial law and dictatorship make a Maidan impossible. Protests would lead to deaths and men sent to the front. Why isn't there a Maidan in Russia? The country is a dictatorship where all political opinion is suppressed.
Denis, sorry to interrupt, but you already said today that for Putin, for Russia, Donbas is a hole where a lot of money goes. Tell me, did he need Donbas in the first place? Does he need it today? And does he need the whole of Ukraine?
Is all of Ukraine unrealistic for him? Can you picture Territorial as part of Russia? Well, that would mean the entire right bank. It would be an endless partisan war, so why get involved in that? It would undermine him politically. Everyone understands this perfectly well. Did he want Donbas? No, but it's a way to impress the masses. We have an empire. I'm a conqueror who reclaimed what is historically ours. These are history's lessons. I returned this to Russia, my dear homeland. That's how it is, and it's sad. Of course, economically, for him, it's a completely unprofitable project, and the people who live there and don't understand that their taxes are going to this nonsense instead of improving their lives.
Sorry, everyone, we have a call. Let's take it. Denis is fine with it.
Denis doesn't mind.
We didn't make it in time. Sorry, let's continue. Oh, wait, the phone is ringing again.
We're listening to you.
Good morning, you're on the air.
Good morning. My name is Mikhail. I have a question for Denis. Denis, could you please tell me, well, it's no secret to anyone that the European economy is in decline. The American economy is in decline in general. The entire Western economy is basically in decline right now. And what makes you think they will be able to turn Ukraine into something like the Arab Emirates if they can't even lift their own economies at this point in time?
Excuse me, and where are you? Where do you live?
In Canada,
In Canada? Yeah, well, you need to update your information. So to speak, the term West isn't quite accurate for the economy. It was Putin who began calling everyone the collective West. The economy in America is thriving. The United States gross domestic product is $31 trillion. Just think about that. $31 trillion. Russia's gross domestic product is $2.5 trillion, just so you understand. Yes, the economy in Europe is in decline, but that just means it's not growing, it's stagnating, in my opinion, collectively. The European Union's gross domestic product is $20 trillion, so combined with the United States, their economies exceed $50 trillion. We haven't even counted your Canada yet. I think it's 5 trillion or 4, the economy is 2.5.
less than Russia's.
I'll look into it again. I mean, I'll check this information. But anyway, that's not the point.
The point is what you're saying. If you look at what share of the debt is government debt in America, yes. So there's the debt and the gross domestic product. Just look. The debt is 37 trillion and the gross domestic product is 33. So the debt exceeds the gross domestic product.
I don't want to offend you in any way, but I hear typical Russian narratives from you. The only thing you haven't said is that the dollar will collapse soon and become worthless. Please don't take offense, because what?
I haven't said anything like that about the dollar yet, but I see that gold is rising sharply, and that says something.
Yes, gold is rising sharply. You have to understand, when a person is involved in big business, they take out loans one way or another. Simply put, he's in debt just like the government. I can discuss this as much as I want. I'm not judging it, but claiming this will cause the West to collapse tomorrow is unrealistic. Now, no one collapse.
They have no money and are buried in debt themselves.
But when will you?
Rebuilding Ukraine is very expensive.
Trump is creating an $800 billion fund, which will be filled, of course, not in a single year. And no one is going to turn Ukraine into Dubai. Only Ukraine itself can turn itself into Dubai. Neither Trump nor anyone else will do that for Ukraine. Other reforms need to be carried out there to get closer to that. What you said, but 800 billion, I'll repeat, the gross domestic product is $31 trillion. Restoring Ukraine will need several hundred billion over years, not all at once. I see no problem. Besides, money will be earned and generated in Ukraine thanks to these investments. So the economy works a bit differently. Don't worry so much about these debts. Putin has none, and it doesn't benefit him.
Yes, Mikhail has already, well, he's had enough, so
Well, no, Mikhail, when he spoke, he said something. It was about the American economy being compared, I think, to the Russian one. If I'm not mistaken,
He said it was the Canadian one.
the Canadian one is smaller than the Russian one.
I'll check, but I doubt Canada has 2.5 trillion. I think it's about 4. The final viewers will review and confirm.
yes. 54% write their name as Denis. Ukrainians are categorically against handing over the entire Donbass to Russian control in exchange for security guarantees from the United States and Europe, while 39% are ready to agree. How accurate is this figure?
Source? Someone wrote.
The source is a KMIS poll. I don't know what KMIS is.
Well, thanks to him for adding that. KMIS is a trash organization that works in the interests of the authorities. No one in Ukraine will publish the real ratings today, because anyone who does could end up at the front and penniless tomorrow. In my last stream, I held a poll on my channel with 10,200 votes. 94% think this must be done.
That this is necessary.
Yes, there's another perspective.
They have a different point of view. 1 second. So what kind of idiot would want to rebuild Ukraine's economy? I don't really understand that. But let me ask you persistently, what kind of idiot would want to rebuild Ukraine's economy? Who needs a Ukraine like that? What's the point of developing Ukraine if all its natural resources have already been given away?
That's another part of the propaganda, the talking points. What does given away even mean? This is a person, Alexander. It's the same thing on every broadcast. Ukraine has $7 trillion in underground mineral resources, but lacks the funds and technology to extract them, so they remain untapped. If someone from Ukraine writes this, they got nothing. No kopecks, cents, or dollars, and never would have before. America comes in, extracts the resources, and we get a share of the profits from there. America comes with technology, with huge investments. This money stays inside Ukraine. They bring technology to Ukraine, and our people get trained. And this is part of another kind of propaganda, the internal one. They say the land was sold, even though land is sold all over the world, but Ukrainian land must never be sold under any circumstances.
Why?
Because this is the land of a specific person, the one who writes the comments. He thinks it's his, he doesn't have access to it, but he believes it's his because someone once told him so during Soviet times.
Denis, and to continue this question, tell me, if all the leaders of this world hear us and the war in Ukraine ends tomorrow, today, or yesterday, who will invest? Who do you think would be the first to invest money and start investing a little to help Ukraine rise? Which country would be most interested in this?
Well, first of all, the United States of America. First of all, the United States of America and all of Europe, because rebuilding a country after a war has always been a super profitable business. For example, just look at Germany. I want to tell you even more. Trump pressured Putin enough that $100 billion of his $300 billion in frozen assets will come here. They might call this reparations and claim victory, saying we made Putin pay. But actually, it's Trump. Let's see if that's really true.
Bodan, I don't know, so to speak, is asking me. This is already the 16th time you've written this question. I skip it. You send it back to me. Ask Denis. Why are Trump and Europe not commenting on Ukraine's mobilization?
Is Trump the president of Ukraine?
That's what I thought first.
First, why are people silent about mobilization in Ukraine? Trump should consider this in America, Europeans in Europe. This guy got scared and avoids discussing it. People make anonymous X accounts, post, support me, and spread the word. But just sitting and saying, let someone come and save me, that's a typical mentality, unfortunately, ours. Moreover, about Europe, I'll say it again, this process is beneficial for Europe. Today, they gave Zelensky the green light for this lawlessness because they believe it restrains Putin in relation to Europe, and they have a safe period while this chaos is happening here.
Bogdan, they're reproaching you here about whether you disconnected Mikhail or if he disconnected himself. So if there are calls, please let people continue the discussion with Denis. If Denis doesn't mind, ask Bogdan why, Bogdan. You and Denis are both from Ukraine, Bogdan. What is this question about? What would you like to ask Denis today about your country? And why did you, so to speak, you and Denis, if you are like that? Well, guys, I'm not trying to offend you now, but if you are such patriots of Ukraine, why did you run away? You left 10 years ago, Denis, and later on. Bogdan, I've never asked, why are you in Ukraine?
Simple emigration. I came here for a better life. It just happened that way. Back then, it wasn't super peaceful anymore. Again, we all know what Ukraine is like. I lived quite close to the border with Russia. Again, those were not the best times. I can't say that I had a lot of opportunities there. I was a hardworking guy, but I didn't have many opportunities here either after coming here. Even though you don't like this word, as an ordinary worker, as an ordinary person, I started to feel like a human being. And today I can say that I'm glad this happened to me. Otherwise, it's possible that I wouldn't be here either, or I would be in captivity, or nobody knows what could have happened.
But what about patriotism then?
I love my country, but you know, as they say, a fish looks for thicker ice and a person looks for a better place. I came here, I look at it from the outside now, and I just want people there to thrive. That's my homeland. I was born there, and I want everything to be good there.
Alexandra, I'm sorry, but I can't stay silent. This person is asking because his understanding and Boden's life are tied to Ukraine. Like with Stalin and Zhukov before, he doesn't realize Bodan is me. Even the person asking the question, he is only the owner of his own life, his own fate, and no one has the right to tell him what to do. But his mind doesn't work like that. By the way, why did you run away from me? If I were in prison or dead, that person would likely be happy. I'm here defending his rights, even though it may seem like I'm working against him, saying things like, let's send him to the front or rob him. But they don't want to talk so much. They don't even understand that.
Yes, Denis, I completely agree with you. I'll also add that in my 23 years of living in Ukraine, Ukraine didn't really give me much. I grew up in a single-parent family, and Ukraine didn't really support me. My mom is the person who did so much more for me than Ukraine ever did, even a little bit. So basically, I can even say that they are my adversaries, but no, there are people there whom I only touched as a person, but I can't hate the cultures.
Interesting, Denis Bodan wrote, patriotism is the prosperity of a citizen, not just digging trenches. I think that's right. No, Denis?
Of course, you need to be a patriot of yourself. If I lived in another country and everything was fine, I might have forgotten about Ukraine and wouldn't be discussing it with you or dealing with it myself. I'm taking action, but as they say, patriotism is the last refuge of scoundrels. Who said that? Bernard Shaw? Maybe there's something to that, though I see myself as a patriot of Ukraine. Others might disagree, right?
Why is it that out of all our guests whom I invite and listen to every day, I can say that the late Hennady Viktorovich Balashov, by the way, this is the first time I've heard Bodan speak so much about Ukraine. And it sounds so sincere and honest that when they say, let Bodan speak, they say he's just an ordinary person or whatever they call him. That Bodan is the voice of the people today, that's the voice of the people. Well, that's the point of view of the person who wrote this. Well, by the way, I think this conversation today is exactly between you, Denis, and Bodan. This is more interesting than any political analysts I could have invited to Radio Viera today. That's how I feel. Don't you agree with me?
Yes, absolutely. These are primary sources. It's real. Neither Bodan nor I have any agenda or script. We speak for ourselves, and that's what matters most.
Thank you.
You know, guys, I also want to remind you that when all this started happening in Donbas, the people who wanted power, who wanted authority, who wanted money, they began shouting, "You're bad," and blaming others. And it wouldn't matter if America came or anyone else, they would shout, "I'm a patriot of that country. Come on, you're the bad one." So basically, the same people remained, even though the country's name changed and the whole government changed, but the people there stayed the same, and they are trying to do something for their region.
Well, yes, they write comments. The cities are closed off with checkpoints. Movement is impossible. How do you suggest we revolt? The videos on the internet haven't helped much.
When did I suggest revolting or make any suggestion?
I didn't hear what I wanted to ask you. Maybe Bodan heard it?
That's classic. That's classic. To attribute something he understood in his own way and said it. What's the use of a video on the internet? And why do oligarchs invest in Ukraine and all over the world? Huge amounts of money are invested in media. Politicians are bought. People don't understand what attention is. Today, it's the new currency. I've organized hundreds of thousands of people around me. Millions are watching. That's not influence. That's not influence on the situation. Whenever they tried something, we went public and made noise, so they realized not to proceed. That's scary. That's really scary. The person doesn't even understand how an adult works. He probably doesn't understand how everything works.
Tell me, please, that's exactly right. You're absolutely right. So tell me, please, I mentioned our broadcast from yesterday to you. Yes, when the Jews and the Arab came to talk, yes, the Israeli and the representative from Iraq, Bogdan, and I were hosting that show. I never thought, honestly, that such a dialogue was even possible. I never thought it would ever be possible to have a dialogue between a Russian and a Ukrainian after what's happening today.
Yes, but if you understand, if it's just as sincere. I watched Ezra and that other guy you had for a few minutes yesterday. But it has to be without any scripts and from the heart. Because you could say, let's do it with Kedbi. but Kedbi won't listen to anyone and will just keep repeating his own thing. If it's sincere, genuine, or a decent Russian from Russia, then there's no problem at all.
For example, Denis, suppose you're representing Russia. A reasonable person might say, Denis, I think differently, or agree, explain, or tell me, or that's possible. I'm saying this now, not later.
Well, probably yes. Later for sure, today too, probably. Yes, I don't have any red lines for myself. Why? Because I know that freedom of speech is the foundation of democracy. And if we don't discuss this, then people simply won't have the full information right now. Since there's a tense war, everyone will share their own truth. I believe this should be done after a peace agreement is signed. It's just the right thing to do.
I think so too. Tell me, please, let me ask you something for a second. Subscriptions, that's probably about your channel. No, I'll ask something else.
Can I ask while you're looking for questions?
I'll just ask one thing. What does a decent Russian mean to Denis?
Someone who doesn't follow the manual. Putin. But someone who speaks for himself, even if I dislike what he says, doesn't serve Putin's media machine.
Denis. And sometimes there are talks about elections in Ukraine that they're about to happen. Quick question, do you think they'll happen soon? Second, today politicians in Ukraine have become more active. There are a lot of events happening with Yulia Tymoshenko. Do you think they are preparing for the elections and trying to participate in this race, and will they succeed? Because I probably agree with you. Today, after all, Zelensky has somewhat usurped power at home in Ukraine.
Well, not somewhat. It's a complete dictatorship. Yes, I believe in elections. I believe in elections this year, 100%. Of course, many are preparing. But if once again people choose those who have been in power for 30 years, those who have little by little, indirectly or directly led to this situation, then what's the point of talking about anything at all? So people themselves are once again choosing such a fate. I'm saying we need to forget everything that happened before because it led to today's situation. It's not about Putin. He's the aggressor and attacked. But were we strong enough to stop him?
Well, yes, someone wrote to us here that Jews made Ukrainians and Russians quarrel. Well, that's obvious. What else could you expect from such a comment?
I'll go even further, Sasha. I've heard a theory that all of this was started by Jews to destroy all Ukrainians and take over this land.
To come live in Donbass from sunny Israel, to the mine Donbass among the coal.
The mountains, the coal, of course.
Yes. Shalom from Israel to Denis Yelisevich and Bodan Tarikanov. Guys, this is for you. Well, not any further. Sorry, that's not with me. Tell me, please, as of today, your audience that watches and listens to you is truly enormous. What questions do people usually ask you, and what are Ukraine's residents asking today?
It's mainly about the current agenda. Denis, when will this end, or will it ever end? But I try to do more explanatory work for people because I understand even the major American and European media, I know who owns them. The information there will be distorted. 5 editors rewrite everything to implant it directly into a person's mind. Do you think this work is done directly without editing or an agenda? Of course, I have my own opinion, philosophy, vision, and more. That's natural, but the questions are usually about current events. What will happen, what to do, etc.
I mean, people are more, let me put it this way, people are more interested when they ask you questions and talk to you. The end of the war on any terms today, or do they say something different? I mean, those who live in Ukraine today, Denis, no?
My audience supports ending the war, but I would reject any terms. Why? Someone will claim capitulation is acceptable, but they always labeled my proposals as capitulation. That's not what we're discussing here. My audience supports Trump's current plan. In the last stream, a poll was conducted, 94% supported.
94? Tell me, please, regarding Trump, is he considered an enemy in Ukrainian society today, or on the contrary?
An enemy is an enemy. Number one is Putin, number two is Trump. Well, why don't they explain?
No, wait, why Putin? I get it.
No, not Trump. They don't explain. Putin is obvious.
Some smart guy wrote that peace will come when Ukrainians repent. Do you hear me, Denis, what I just said?
Those scoundrels, I don't want to answer or argue with them. They're scoundrels.
You know, I'm ready to repent as a Ukrainian if it means all this will end, if it will save my people, the people in Donbass, in Ukraine. I'm even ready to repent a little.
Well, you can't repent just a little. Bowden, it's either yes or no, but personally, I'm not ready to repent for anything.
Because personally, I have nothing to repent for. I never wished harm on Russians. I never called for them to be bombed, and so on and so forth.
And then look, there is de jure and there is de facto. The war started in 2022. It did start. It's not like someone else started it still, right?
The hybrid conflict began in 2013-2014 as the events in Crimea and Donbass were part of a hybrid war. Those little green men. So it's been going on for 13 years now.
Bowden, you left in 2013, correct?
Yeah, I left at the beginning of 2013.
The reason was the hybrid war Denis mentioned.
No, not yet.
Bodan says not yet.
Yes, we're talking about a year after the Maidan when it all happened.
It began in fall 13 and took off in early 14.
Yeah, in the spring of 14, well, yes, you could call it a hybrid war, but it wasn't just some kind of takeover. It was already a hybrid war. We can call it whatever we want. People were dying and fighting, invading foreign territories. It was already war.
Unfortunately, I can't read the question to you because it's in Ukrainian and I don't want to read it poorly. Let me...
Denis, he has to restrain Putin, not to go on the offensive when we leave Donbass. I think this is the biggest concern for most people.
Yes, I'll answer, but I'll answer in Russian because after all, most people understand Russian. So President Trump, the United States, the participants in these events. We pull troops from Donbass and then Putin ignores Trump and acts independently. How will Trump and the international community react? What does this person think? Trump is here for a reason. Does this person understand that or not? Or did we just sit down on a bench with Putin and he promised us something? I'm not trying to insult anyone, just demonstrating how propaganda operates. They never explain this. For example, basic things.
Well, tell me, Denis, when you say that in Ukraine today, Putin is enemy number one and Trump is enemy number two, when do Ukrainians say that Trump is an enemy? Because again, I want to ask why.
Usually there is no answer, but where there is an answer, you have to work hard to hear an insult. But they'll say, he should have given more weapons, but I'm not going to fight with those weapons. He should have given more money so that more could be stolen. Yermak with Zelensky, then he was supposed to force Putin
But they say,
to bomb Russia. So Trump was supposed to, because of how everything happened here, start World War III. But do you understand now?
yes, that you might hear the phrase that Trump should have bombed Russia in order to end the war in Ukraine. Did I hear that right?
Yes. Well, I mean, to put pressure, like if not, then bomb them, enter the war. That's basically the argument. Well, how else can you put pressure? He's increasing pressure, taking over the fleet with sanctions ready. Action will start in Iran, has already occurred in Venezuela, and will happen in Cuba. He's applying pressure. For people like in movies, everything seems simple and easy.
And about that, ask Denis about Israel and today's attitude of Ukraine, of Ukrainian society towards Israel and in general. Well, probably towards Jews. That's how I understand it.
I don't discuss it. My audience has no anti-Semites except for a few obvious ones who show up, insult, and get blocked immediately. No one talks about Israel because we have our own problems. Normal people sympathized with Israel when the tragedy happened on October 7, and everyone was with Israel. And I saw few exceptions. The exceptions were also those who were brainwashed by propaganda. You know what else happened? They even started putting the Ukrainian flag and the Turkish or Palestinian flag in their nicknames. Those are the ones who are brainwashed by this propaganda, the radicals.
This refers to the comparison between Ukraine and Palestine.
Victims, like Palestine is a victim and Ukraine is a victim. That's the kind of parallels they draw.
Are these people representatives of Ukrainian society or somewhere else?
Who are totally brainwashed by propaganda and hardened.
There are those people too.
Well, of course, but I have to say they're definitely not the majority.
When we started the show, I saw the globe, as I mentioned. More people are now watching and listening to you, Denis. Ukrainian or Russian?
Russia is also not dominating like Ukraine. No options there. Russia is at 3 to 4% in the metrics.
But there are Russian-speaking Canadians and Americans.
Well, I have viewers from Canada and the United States, and they must be Russian-speaking if they're listening to me, we suspect. So it's the diaspora, yes. There are fewer in Canada, more in the United States.
What do you think as of today? Has your attitude, or rather, has your attitude toward Trump changed today?
No, not at all. Absolutely not. I don't see anyone in the world today who is capable of taking action and who is fighting against the globalists.
What do you think 3 years today? It was just January 20th, a year since he became president, his second term. Do you think he'll accomplish much in these 3 years? Many believe time will pass, someone new will take over, and those who dislike Trump will be glad he's gone.
Well, you know what risks there are regarding the midterm elections? If he remains president, he'll have time to do a lot. The Democrats are dreaming of how to impeach him. And of course, he will still have a lot of problems, but I believe that he will stand firm and do everything he needs to do. If he stands firm, the world will change by the end of his term.
What does Denis think about the problem between the United States and Canada? Because allowing Chinese cars into the Canadian market is a terrible mistake.
And while we were talking, I checked Mikhail, who called. The guy was right. Canada's gross domestic product last year was 2.3 trillion. I'm shocked. I thought Canada's economy was somehow bigger. But there you have it. We need to be friends and trade with the United States. And what Carney is doing, trying to make a deal with China, if it weren't for Trump, he would have made it. That just doesn't fit in my head. I just can't understand it. Only someone who's a Chinese agent or something like that could do this. Your neighbor is the United States and you're going to make a deal with China where obviously bad people are in power. Communists. That's just the limit. Unbelievable.
You amaze me, you know that? And you know what else? Just now you said, I checked, the guy who called was right. You see, now we're talking about something else. Yes, about, let's say, Canada's gross domestic product. Denis, what you just said, the person who called was right. So you were wrong. That's how you run your streams. When you can say I was wrong, I think this way, it seems to me, that's it. You see, that's it. Not everyone can say I was wrong there, I didn't say it right, or Mikhail described the situation exactly for me. That's why I watch Denis Yelisevich. You don't put on a show. You just say what you feel, think, and know.
Thank you, but I have to say that I can only make mistakes in things like this. I just have a good visual memory, so in such moments I might be wrong. But conceptually, I haven't made any mistakes so far.
The author says a nationwide referendum is needed in Ukraine. Roughly 90% of people will choose to live in Russia. Isn't that clear?
This is a patient who needs to be treated? But the war has been going on for 4 years, you see. He writes things like that, but the war has been going on for 4 years. So why didn't they surrender to Russia right away? If everyone wants that, why were there people? Why were there military enlistment offices with lines kilometers long? If everyone wants to be part of Russia, you see, how do you even talk to them?
Well, Eurovision showed Ukrainians' attitude towards Israelis. I guess they mean the voting, right? Or what is it, Denis?
I guess they mean the voting.
You know, I think about 50 people have asked me this question, so it must be a tricky one. That's why on the 51st time, I'll finally bring it up. Well, has anyone ever called out Zelensky about mobilization even once? Do you even realize what you're saying? Well, it doesn't concern you. It doesn't matter here because you're not in Ukraine. That's how I understand it.
The person is in favor of mobilization. I got it.
Has anyone publicly challenged Zelensky on mobilization? Who, when, and how? I don't get it.
I didn't get it either. If he's asking if I did it, he probably hasn't been following me or knows what I do.
Well, I think this question is more about whether any world leaders have called him out about this. Honestly, I think this is being discussed in the news, even in America. I heard that once they showed someone being pushed into a van after the Oval Office.
They showed this after the Oval Office?
They showed it.
Then this wave started, but no one will do it now. First of all, it wasn't Trump who gave him the green light for these actions. It was the Europeans and Biden. Understand that Ukraine is weakening Russia, which indirectly benefits America. That's why raising these topics now would weaken the government, and no one will do that at this time.
Well, you write that Ukraine almost always votes against the resolutions proposed by Israel at the United Nations. Yes, that's true. And Denis and I discussed this. You say I don't ask Denis. Well, Denis, okay, I'm asking you, why does Ukraine vote against Israel? I'm not sure how to ask, but since I'm insisting, I will.
We've already talked about this. I'm not the one voting. The authorities act that way because they're likely following orders or an agenda which explains their voting decisions. Right now,
Denis Secundu, there are no lines at the military enlistment offices in Ukraine right now. So does that mean the people of Ukraine don't want to fight against Russia? Or is there another reason why there are no lines at the enlistment offices?
yes, people want peace, but not to surrender to Russia, not 95% to Russia. People want peace now, the kind that is possible under the current conditions. This is a distortion of the facts.
Well, occupation is not the same as you said. You just said capitulation, and that's not the same thing. You just said that. There are no lines at the military enlistment office. Why aren't there any?
95% want peace, but not as part of Russia, not capitulation.
As a Jew, I'm ashamed. Denis is ashamed of his Jewishness. I didn't know this about Denis, or if you're even Jewish, but it's strange. Well, the glorification of Bandera, how was Russia supposed to react to such actions from Ukraine if Ukraine is glorifying, well, basically such bandits?
But I see our people are once again accusing Denis of fighting for Ukraine from the United States. Didn't you get it the first time that if Denis hadn't left Ukraine, he would be in prison or something like that?
Denis was right when he said that if this happened and he wasn't killed, he would be in prison. That would only bring satisfaction to those who write this and nothing more. So what does it mean? Like if Denis was just sitting at home with his family right now, even in Florida, and doing nothing, then he would probably be considered a good person. That's how I understand this comment. I get it.
That's how the comment ends. Or better yet, you support yourself in Russia, even if you left as a traitor and supported Russia without fighting for it. That's the toxic awareness people have. They just personally dislike me.
Guys, we have a call. I suggest we take it. Go ahead. Good morning. You're on the air. What's your name?
Hello, my name is Roman.
Roman, I can barely hear you, but now I can hear you well.
We're listening to you.
And now we're listening.
Yes.
We're listening now. Thank you, Roman. Yes, yes.
Hello, Sashenka.
Hello?
I would like to ask a question. You know, Gennady Balashov, I really feel sorry for this person. Did you used to invite him often back then? Yes, I wanted to know how he supports your guest today, his 5.10 program. Yes, I think that was his program.
Yes.
I support it. I support the economic program.
Ah, thank you. Well, as they say, from a Russian person to a Ukrainian, a big hello.
Roman, thank you for Sashenka. Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you so much. Well, by the way, it's not the first time. Denis, I see people writing that you are, so to speak, a successor to Balashov's people, but you didn't always agree with him. Is that right?
I wouldn't want to return to that. I'm not a successor to Balashov's people. Balashov was a pioneer who founded the Libertarian Party. I'm not a party member, and it's run by someone else who likely continues Balashov's ideas. We shared the same economic concept completely.
Well, you know, it's kind of a joke, a tease towards you. Like, what if they turned off the heating in Florida? In Florida, you don't need heating at all. My dear.
There is none?
You know, it just gets completely absurd. The person doesn't even know where Florida is. It's just funny.
Well, let's say, Alexander, let's say if there was, I always have electricity. Let's put it this way. There is electricity in Florida. There's always electricity. While in Ukraine, there isn't, and my mom doesn't have it, and my grandmother doesn't have it. I'm supporting the people and this person without electricity or heat, yet he still sees me as the bad guy.
Yes, Denis supports specific correct actions of Trump, not Trump in general. He always talks not about liking Trump, but about a specific action. He analyzes the deed. Apparently, that's the person who's listening to you.
Yes, probably.
Well, and then they kept picking on Denis and so on and so on. Eternal memory to Gennady Balashov. Are you in contact with Gennady's family, and do you know what's happening now? I'm not sure if I should ask you about this.
I'm not in touch and haven't been contacted by anyone.
So, how did you remember our Gennady Balashov? I see people have really become active and are writing a lot about the bright memory of this person.
Yes, indeed. And I want to tell you, Denis, that when Gennady came to us, he came quite often and we talked with him. I've already told you that he even suggested we do our streams together in a vertical format completely separately. It was just me, him, and you. You can't imagine how many people watched in Europe, Russia, Ukraine, and elsewhere. And my friends called me and said what an interesting person he is, what he came up with, this format, how it attracted those who listened to him and loved him. And I think that Balashov was such a figure that he will remain in people's memory for a long time, because what people started writing, well, Denis is practically the only one who continues the direction of Gennady Balashov. Well, those from Florida write, we have heating, we just turn up the heat and so on. Blessed memory to Boris Nemtsov. Well, in general, ask Denis how much. Why doesn't Denis organize AFU fundraisers?
So, is there a thought that this is personal money for this donation, like this person thinks so?
No, but tell me, please, here's a question. If you donated, why, knowing that this money wouldn't go to what you sent it for? No.
Who said that? I never gave to any foundation because they're all scammers. I gave directly to people I know who are on the front line or to my acquaintances. But I did open fundraisers. I never did my own. I could repost other people's. The clinic my friend runs in Kiev offers free rehabilitation for soldiers. We arranged that. Sometimes soldiers requested extra help, but I never organized my own fundraisers. I helped personally and occasionally shared others' fundraisers. I didn't do any public relations for this, like taking public relations photos. Look, I'm a good person and a patriot. That's what they need, and those are the ones they'll pick now. How much did you really do there? No camera, no one cares. Well, that's fantastic, of course.
You said something interesting. Let me read you a comment. I'm really curious how you'll react to it. Reasonable Ukrainians and Russians are a brotherly people. I think future generations will study our war solely as a civil war between Orthodox Christians. What would your comment be, Denis?
This is not a civil war. I avoid those discussions since some people reduce everything to the idea of the triune holy Rus, pitting Orthodox against Orthodox. It's terrible that one ethnic group has turned against each other. I mentioned this at the beginning of the broadcast. But it was with these ideas that a scoundrel came to power in Russia, a dictator who attacked a neighboring country, who was ruled by the same kind of scoundrel, a dictator. That's the story. The big Soviet attacked the little Soviet, much to my regret.
You said the big Soviet attacked the small Soviet?
Well, of course, Russia, the big Soviet, attacked the little Soviet. In both Russia and Ukraine, people aren't valued. There's propaganda and dumbing down on both sides. Constructive, creative, and productive people are needed, but not in either place.
Begdan, I'm sorry, please.
Yes, Denny, we discussed the Civil War. You say that you don't think it was exactly that, but tell me, do you think that in 2014 something started in Donbass? We started specifically with the Civil War, and then it grew into something bigger, or was it an attack right from the start?
It's a hybrid war. Oh, I said an element of hybrid war, of course, to incite the population. You can find YouTube footage of Kharkiv when Kernes was mayor, showing efforts to destabilize the city. A big square, crowds with tricolor flags, and ongoing unrest. This is the technology, sleeper agents who were in Donbass and those who were brought there. Additionally, they were carrying this out, inciting people. There are enterprises there that employ thousands. It was impossible to do that. Generally, it's easy to implement such things among the disadvantaged. The older generation was particularly active, so it appeared like civil unrest from the outside. But without the little green men, it wouldn't have happened.
Do you mean 2013?
Well, of course. They began funding this technologically, stirred up the population, launched an intense information campaign, and then little green men started seizing small towns in Donbass. At first, I watched this in horror. Our country was being torn apart, but after that, for us, it all ended. Well, it was kind of in that phase. Few people were dying in the anti-terrorist operation already. What did Poroshenko do during his term? Nothing. What has Zelensky done since 2019? Nothing. Nothing.
You?
Denis, you've probably already answered this question more than once, but honestly, I haven't heard it. I don't know your opinion on this. Tell me, if Zelensky hadn't been elected president, would there have been this war? Because I've heard several times already that if it weren't for Zelensky, there wouldn't have been a war.
It wouldn't have happened then. If Poroshenko had served a second term, I'm sure it wouldn't have happened during his presidency, but it would have right after.
Why is that? Is it because Poroshenko's political experience would have helped him, or is there another reason?
Here's how I'll say it, legally and competently. There is a lot of information in the press that says Poroshenko interacted with Putin's close associate Medvedchuk and did business with them. The famous audio, I shake your hand, I hug you. So is it right to maneuver, avoiding war? It's right, but when you profit from it yourself, this is just an assumption based on what I read in the press. Well, that's not a great story. So of course, why attack your partner? But it ended just as sadly because, by the way, during Poroshenko's term, for some reason, a huge number of ammunition depots burned down, can you imagine, which are so badly needed now. That's how, in a miraculous way, all this happened in Ukraine.
Here's another question, Denis. This weekend we had a big event here in Canada, in Vancouver, and they discussed, well, it was a business event, a big business meeting, and people were there. At some point, the speaker who was on stage started saying that this doesn't help the economy. We, Canadian people, Canadian businessmen need to start this, and he started saying that this war doesn't help Canada develop, and we need to. What shocked, I think, the whole audience, we need to distance ourselves more from Ukraine and start cooperating with Russia. I didn't repeat everything exactly, but that was the meaning.
Yes, you see, it hurts us because we're from Ukraine, but this person had a pragmatic approach. He's Canadian. Russia is a country with bigger resources than Ukraine and potentially a bigger trade turnover with Canada. Maybe he chooses Canada for himself and he isn't really affected by what Russia has done. He has a completely pragmatic approach to this. That's how it is. And you see, I can't judge him. I don't like it, I admit that, but I can't judge him because I don't expect to be loved all over the world. Because I have a Ukrainian passport, and in Ukraine, people expect to be loved and adored there.
Well, you know, Boden, you just mentioned what that person said, right? I've already talked about it. I was in Israel, Denis, and that was 2 years ago. My American friend who speaks Russian and I took a taxi and spoke Russian. The Israeli driver didn't speak Russian, but he understood us. Now their Israelis recognize it's Russian and ask if we're from Canada or the United States. Well, he started asking us about the Ukraine-Russia war, and I said that I would prefer not to talk about that topic. And then he says, well, why don't you ask me? Ask me what I think about it. So I asked him, and he answered me in Hebrew, Zalemil Kamashili. This is not my war. We have enough problems here in Israel. This is not my war. I think what you just asked, Bodan, and how you answered suggests maybe it's not his war either, Bodan, right? Or maybe you can't say that.
It's likely not his war after all. But my question was more about whether the attitude of those same businessmen is changing.
Whether their attitude is changing because everyone knows about the corruption, now it's out in the open. Before, when I would speak out, or people like me, they'd just say, well, he just doesn't like Zelensky or he's working for someone else. But now it's public knowledge. Everyone knows some of the money was and is being stolen. So why should we participate? Also, I expected something different from that businessman, given his Western background. Plus, ties with Russia remain strong. If you're not in raw materials, you can't build a big business. The market won't open for you. It's a resource-based, not a service economy. So why not say, let's get closer to America? Since Canada's gross domestic product is lower than I thought, let's consider America or Russia instead. Do you have any personal preferences?
Well, you see, Denis, they're saying that you were cut off from the trough, and that's why you're upset. What trough were you cut off from?
Denis, Alexandra, this broadcast has been on for nearly 2 hours. Classic. We've already covered all the classics I replayed, especially in the first year. They claim you lost access to benefits, then Zelensky denied you a job, so you sought revenge. What benefits do they mean? I've been an entrepreneur since 2012, never joined tenders, held positions, or worked with government funds. What trough are they referring to? I had a successful business in a clean market. What trough are they referring to?
This is just ridiculous. I'm even telling you, when there are no arguments left, then it's about the trough. Then what else did they tell you? You're not a patriot, something else. I don't even know. When I talked again with the late Balashov, I always noticed that he always said the same phrase, and you and I discussed this. I asked, Gennady Viktorovich, why are you always in a bad mood when the weather is nice? Another thing he told me was, I want to go home. He said it like it was manna from heaven. I want to go home. And when I asked, what if everything works out for your children? He said, no, I want to go home. And I heard this endlessly. He said it was such pain. These weren't just slogans. It wasn't like, as you say, if I were promoting myself, then it would be a different attitude. Or about the money, like how much you sent, how much you have now, what you do, what source of income you were cut off from, whether you're Jewish or not. You see, these things worry people much more than what we've been talking about for almost 2 hours. And it's strange and hurtful. Something like that, right?
Poisoned mind, Alexander. There's no other way to say it. We're discussing serious economic matters here. Serious economic matters that Vitkov talked about. That Trump, people don't need that. And this, you see, is the story. Let me quickly tell you another small example. I have a reform program for Ukraine, and one of the reforms is very brief. When the pension is equalized to $300 for everyone, why isn't that Soviet equalization? Right now, people here just get $60 as a pension. If anyone doesn't know, $60, $60 to $80. So let the Canadians not faint. And the privileged ones, for example, a prosecutor, a judge who was close to the feeding trough, as you said, well, they get $1,000, $500, $600, and I suggest that we take this away from the privileged because they are corrupt. And people come and say, my grandmother is against your reform. Why should this janitor get the same as her? I ask, what is your grandmother's pension? $100, I say, well, I'm proposing $300, yours will be higher. No, it's about principle. The janitor shouldn't get what I have and the neighbor shouldn't have more. No, wait.
Are you serious right now?
Yes, yes.
So if everyone in Ukraine gets a $300 pension, that's worse than if, for example, a grandmother gets 100 and a janitor gets 10?
I haven't decided for everyone, but I'm explaining how some people with a poisoned mindset react. Soviet mentality.
That's interesting. When you said the big Sovok attacked the little Sovok, I've never heard anything like that before.
No, I'm not the author. Someone else said it accurately before me.
No, I mean for myself. When we say Sovok, I remember only one thing. From the point of view of those Russians I talked to, when they decided to use Jews as a bargaining chip and say, well, look, Alexandra, you're Jewish and the Ukrainians, they're anti-Semites like this, that, and the other. At first I thought, oh, maybe they're right. And what about Baby Yar? Wait, hold on a second. I left the Soviet Union in 1990, a wonderful country, when anti-Semites joined together as one and shouted, Jews, you, go all to Israel. I had no idea who among them was Russian, who was Ukrainian, who was Belarusian. If there had been Kazakhs or Tatars, I would have understood. They look different, but when it comes to Slavic peoples, I had no idea. Anti-Semites, those who were anti-Semites, were absolutely the same, regardless of whether they were Russian, Ukrainian, or Belarusian. So there's no need to mess with our heads in time. Okay, I've said this many times before.
Once again,
If something isn't clear, I'm sorry, please.
yeah, I want to continue on your topic. You know, Sasha, when the war started in 2022 in Ukraine, a Ukrainian, told me, well, now I understand how we are different from Russians. He never explained it to me, but he understood everything. So it's the same here. You say there's no difference. But that guy figured it out, and now everything is clear.
I really wish, what Denis Yelisevich is saying, so that people live in warm homes, so that they have light for as long as they need it, and so that this nightmare ends. When Denis gave today's numbers, saying we want to kill 50,000, he was right. Then he quickly asked, how many? How did they count those who will die in Ukraine during this time? And you see, when Denis Yelisevich says 1, 2, 3, 4, he can't be heard. And there are other arguments. Are you a patriot or not? Where do you live? And is there heating in Florida? That was awesome, Denis. Really, thank you so much. And so to speak, we were just talking about it, connecting it to yesterday's broadcast. Jews, Arabs, an Israeli, and a representative from Iraq. And I thought if there was an opportunity to invite a Russian, as you said, someone we could talk to, obviously today it's probably almost impossible to arrange such a conversation, but still we need to think about it. I'm very grateful to you, Denis, for what you do and for visiting us. Thank you so much.